welcome to Pen to Paper. This is Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series. I am so excited to start the new addition to my channel that I talked about last week. And yes, I mostly put out writing tips and writing advice, but once a month I want to put out thoughts on the books that I've read and my to-read list for the next month. So today we're going to talk about the books that I read for the month of April, with one exception. I did want to throw in there one very quick read ebook that I read at the end of March, because I think it's going to be a real help to a lot of people. So I'm going to start off with that one. That one is called The Joy of Working at Home, and that one is is co-authored by my friend Anne Margaret Hovsepian, and with three other authors. And I wanted to put this out there because it's a kind of a handy nonfiction book on how to work from home, especially during this pandemic time. Now, maybe you've already figured out how to do that. Maybe you've already set up your office space and decided or figured out how you're going to work with people at home, with your kids or your spouse. Maybe you've got it all figured out, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're still just trying to scramble to kind of put work together every week. Maybe you're stressed because you don't have a good workspace. Well, this is the book for you. And I'm going to put the links down below to all the books that I've read so you can check it out yourself. Basically about embracing the freedom and avoiding the pitfalls of working from home. And because of this pandemic, and we don't really know how the future is going to look, it might seem that working from home might be a permanent solution for many of us. I already do that from home, but I'm a very different situation probably from a lot of you who have found yourself in this spot. As I said, there's a lot of great tips about covering how to manage your time, how to manage your space, how to manage your relationships at home because of work. There's also some very practical advice on how to set up your office, where to set up your office, how to set up boundaries with people in your family when you're working and when they can come to you, when is a good time to spend time with you. Because, balancing life and work is difficult when you're all living together. Overall, this was a great book with beginner and I would say beginner stage and intermediate stage tips. I did find that some of the chapters could have been more in-depth, and maybe because I knew a lot of this already just from my own experiences in reading up. But as I said, it's good for beginner and the beginning stages of intermediate where you're still needing advice on these things. But if you've done these things for a while, some of the chapters I thought could have been more in depth about how to do certain things or just kind of expand on the thoughts they were presenting. Now, as I said, my friend wrote, I believe, 2 of the chapters. I think there's 8 chapters total, so it's a very quick read. Like, I read it in 2 sittings. You could read it in 1 sitting easily. And there's 3 other authors, and I believe all of them wrote 2 chapters each. So a couple of them are more mentally suited, like they're more about the mental headspace that you need to work at home, and a lot of them are more on the hands-on practical side of things. And I believe there's a chapter in there about finances as well. So it's a great read, 4 stars. Go ahead and grab that if you need. I believe it's like about $3 Canadian. So grab that if you feel like you're floundering and you need some advice on working from home. So this was my first April read, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And if you have seen my video on how to not write filler writing, this was the lovely book that inspired it. And it breaks my heart and it makes me so sad because I'm a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas. I loved her Throne of Glass series. And A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the first book in this series, I felt was okay. There was a bunch that could have been omitted and the story would have flowed better and just would have been better overall. And then the second or third book just really caught my attention and was so much better, and I love them. And then she wrote a novella to kind of tie in the original trilogy to this new book that she was putting out. And I thought it was okay too, but it was a little slow. But again, it's a novella. It's just like a tie-in, a bridge between the trilogy and whatever was coming after that. So I was really excited when this book was coming out, and I actually pre-ordered it. And with that pre-order, I was able to tune into an actual live interview with Sarah J. Maas. And so the interview is quite enlightening, and I think actually helped me understand why this book was the way it was. So I will read the back for you, or the side, because it's a hardcover. So this is about Nesta. The original trilogy is about Farah, who is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast tale, where she have the human lands and the fae lands, and she goes over the wall, or I think it's been a while since I've read it. She goes over the wall and she gets kidnapped by this fae lord, and they fall in love, and there's this evil witch that they need to destroy, la-di-da-da. And then you have the second and third ones after that. So Farah has two sisters. She has Elaine, which is the very subdued, meek, considered traditionally beautiful one. And then you have Nesta, who's the very prickly one, who seems she doesn't love her sister very much. And they are always butting heads. So I thought this was going to be very interesting because it's about Nesta, and we don't really know too much about her, except that in the original trilogy, she got put in this cauldron, which is kind of like the beginning of all life. And when she comes out of the cauldron, she's no longer human, she's fae, but almost like something more. She has this deeper magic, and we find out that this magic actually comes from the cauldron, which makes her incredibly powerful, which we see this in the book. So let me read it. Nesta Archerin has always been prickly, proud, swift to anger, and slow to forgive. And ever since being forced into the cauldron and becoming high fae against her will, she's struggled to find a place for herself within the strange, deadly world she inhabits. Worse, she can't seem to move past the horrors of the war with Hibern and all she lost in it. The one person who ignites her temper more than any other is Cashin, the battle-scarred warrior whose position in Rysand and Farah's night court keeps him constantly in Nesta's orbit. But her temper isn't the only thing Cashin ignites. The fire between them is undeniable, and it only burns hotter as they are forced to work closely together. Lots that I have to say on that. Meanwhile, the treacherous human queens who returned to the contingent during the last war have forged a dangerous new alliance, threatening the fragile peace that has settled over the realms. And the key to halting them might very well rely on Cashin and Nesta facing their haunting pasts. Against the sweeping backdrop of a world seared by war and plagued with uncertainty, Nesta and Cashin battle monsters from within and without as they search for acceptance and healing in each other's arms. Okay, so obviously from that we get that we're going to deal with inner demons, romance, and the two words I have to say about this work is it was too much. And there was too much of a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to I'll go straight into the romance. There was not too much romance, too much sex. Which I get if it's there once in a while, but this book was chock full of it. It just wasn't for me. I get one or two scenes, or if it somehow moves the story forward, but it just felt like she kept going back to that over and over again. And I get, yes, there are two characters that are hot and cold, and they attract each other very violently and passionately and all that stuff, but it started taking away from the story. And after I had to just skip over those parts, and I was just flipping literally 5 pages, and I was like, okay, when is this over? When are we going to get to the story? So there was that. There was also too much. There was so much in this book I found that was filler writing that could have been condensed so much more. And really, look at the size of this book. It's insane. It's 735 pages, and it could have easily been 400 pages, around there. One thing that was also too much, and I know from listening to Sarah J. Maas's interview, she was saying how she had gone through some trauma and PTSD in the past and depression and all that. And I felt like she was, what's the word now I'm looking for? She was, I try to find the word. This is crazy. That's the word. Okay, I didn't even see it. I felt like she projected a lot of what she felt and went through into the character. And it's great to have that. I think it's great to have characters that go through emotional trauma and to see them grow as a character, which there was a lot of growth. So I was happy with that. But there was just so much of that struggle constantly, and it just felt more like a diary. And I think if she were to write it as a nonfiction book, her experiences, or, how to go through an emotional trauma or PTSD or whatever she went through, then that would be great. That would be the market for it. But to fill it in with a book that's really supposed to be a story, and it just got to the point where it's too much again. I really do appreciate the intent behind it, but it was just too much. So there was that. Good things. As I said, there was character growth. So Nessa she's still kind of prickly, but she has learned, how the power of love, of family and friends. So that was nice to see. And there was a lot of girl power moments too, where you have these priestesses who are they're working in a library because they've been downtrodden by men in society, and they've given a place of refuge. So Nesta is training with Cashin, who's the captain of the guard for the High Lord, and he's training her to, fight for herself and fend for herself. And she invites these priestesses to kind of feel confident in being able to help themselves as well. So I did appreciate that. And there were two specifically, one high priestess and another character from a different part of the world, the Fae world, who needed that as well. And so it was nice to see that bond between the three female characters. And actually, it was very realistic in how, Nesta had a really deep connection with them and got along really well with them. But with her sisters, although she loves them, she doesn't have as deep of a connection, or she doesn't get along as well with them, and they kind of all butt heads, but still love is there. So it was very realistic in how, that could be a very real case, in your own life as well. And the last thing I want to say about it, yes, I love the ending. The ending was fantastic, and there was great action, movement to the plot, inciting problem. You know what? Like, seriously, the ending could have been a mini novel in itself, a novella in itself. So really, it just needed to be cut down quite a bit, and less non-fiction-y in some parts, and just less erotica. But again, it's new adult, so maybe it's supposed to be like that. I think it was my first new adult book. I don't even know what the original definition of new adult is, but it's supposed to be like, I don't know. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on that book. Number 3 is Boathouse Murders by another author friend of mine, David Goslin, and it's the Bevan Jones series. Now, I already did an interview with David earlier this year when I started up my channel, and we talked more about his second book, which I loved. But I wanted to read the first book, and I wanted to help give him some reviews, and he did the same thing with my book, Scathed Bones. So we did like a buddy review, buddy read, and I loved it. Oh, wait, I forgot to say, this I gave 2 stars. It had some merits, but just too much was... Okay. Back to this. So this one, I loved it. It's a murder mystery retreat. Here, I'll quickly read the back. So we have Professor Bevan Jones. He receives an invitation to a mystery weekend in a Canadian cottage country. He barely has time to breathe the country air when a certain ladybug, that's kind of like, Ladybug is the character who is a mysterious anonymous helper. And she sends him a text message to meet. A minute later, he finds himself in the middle of a real whodunit. And sure enough, this follows the air of Agatha Christie. I felt like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys elements were in here as well, because you got like a hidden staircase and a place where there's a boat and a cave, and then anyways. Lots of movement, action, And then not only do you have the present murder, but it actually seems to tie into a past murder, and it's at a murder mystery retreat weekend. I mean, come on, guys. That would be a dream come true for mystery lovers. And they got to dress up as different mystery characters. So he, I believe, was Hercule Poirot. And then you have people dressing up like the Clue characters, and Agatha and Miss Marple from Agatha Christie. So the whole atmosphere was very reminiscent of a classic murder mystery that something like Agatha Christie would write. I did love the setting. He has a great way of bringing the Canadian setting to life. So it's set in the Eastern Townships in Quebec, the province of Quebec. And so you have some French elements there where the detective and the police officer, it's obviously written in English, but you have some French words thrown in there or just a lot of French colorful language that you would hear here. Well, I'm not in Quebec. I'm in Ontario. Sorry, I grew up in Quebec, so I feel like I live in Quebec and Ontario because I go into Quebec all the time. I literally live just across the border. So, having said that, it was great, fast-paced, not too much filler writing, which I was very happy about. I needed a break from the other book. And the characters, such a great way of bringing the characters to life and just giving them all a color of their own and a breathing, living movement of their own. So I really appreciate that about his writing. Overall, great read. I give it a 4 stars. The only reason why I took off a star is because sometimes the shift in scenes or even shifting when the characters spoke was not very clear in the writing. So I had to do a few double takes and I was like, oh, wait, who's talking? Or wait, we were just in that scene and now we're in this scene. Like, it just wasn't always very smooth and clear. So because it kind of pulled me out of the writing a little bit, I had to knock a star off that. But other than that, it was a great 4-star read. And I'm very happy. I highly support him as an author. Great job, David. I look forward to more work from you. Although he does have a novella that I still haven't read, and it's a collection of short stories. So not a novella, a book of short stories, which I want to get into my hands on sometime. So there you go. In anticipation of Netflix's show, I didn't even know anything about Shadow and Bone, Six of Crows, which is crazy because I was in a big YA phase. Maybe it's because when I got out of my YA phase, I just wasn't aware. But when I found out that Shadow and Bone Netflix series was based on books, I wanted to get into them right away because the series looked really good and I saw the trailer. So I read Six of Crows. That was back in February, March, and then I wanted to read Shadow and Bone. So here we go. And I actually already have an Instagram TV little story where I spoke with Lucy from Books and Brushes, and we hashed out about most of the first 3 episodes, but the differences between the books and the show. But right now I'm going to go into the book. Things that weren't so great. I was very frustrated with the characters sometimes. Alina, she always just kind of puts herself down, is always focusing on her weaknesses, which I get. Your characters are supposed to have weaknesses, but really just a little too much. Again, I also didn't like Mal in the book. He's one of the main love interests, and he was so petty and so boring and one-dimensional. I really couldn't care if she loved him or not. You find out at the beginning of the book that she is in love with him. They've been orphans since they were young. The first book is surrounded by enemies. The once great nation of Ravka has been torn in two by the Shadowfold, a swath of near impenetrable darkness crawling with monsters who feast on human flesh. Now its fate may rest on the shoulders of one lonely refugee. Alina Starkov has never been good at anything. But when her regiment is attacked on the fold and her best friend is brutally injured, Alina reveals a dormant power that saves his life, a power that could be the key to setting her war-ravaged country free. And there's more, but I'm just going to stop there. I don't want to give away too much. Sometimes the characters' motivations didn't make quite a lot of sense. And I can't think of one specific instance. I know that's not very helpful, but there you have it. That's just what was my overall impression of the book. Things I loved about it, though, I love the world building. I love how Ravka is kind of pulls inspiration from Russian culture, and they all have different languages, and And the magic system too was very cool. Actually, I don't think I've ever read a book with magic power of shadows, so that was neat. I loved the Darkling, and yes, he's one of the main love interests. Mostly I loved him just because he was so multidimensional. It was the best character written in the book in terms of his history and the way he acts and his manipulation, but his humanity as well. Just so well done. If only all the other characters were written like that, it would have been a 5-star book for sure, but he was the only one. The depth of his character was very apparent. I did love the story overall. It was pretty, it was a book that just I wanted to keep reading to find out what was next. So the pacing was great, excellent. And I don't want to give away too much. Now, I have had some people ask me, do I need to read Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows to see the show? If you want to know, I would read Six of Crows, which is kind of a different characters. And Six of Crows duology happens several years after the Shadow and Bone original trilogy. So read the Six of Crows and then watch the show, because the show is so much better than the first book. And from what I've heard from people, the second book is not better. So yeah, read Six of Crows and then watch a show to see how they put the two characters together. It's absolutely mind-blowing, amazing. I gave the show 5 stars. The book, I'm going to give a solid 3.5 stars, just because there was a lot of emotional frustration with the characters and their motivations and how that went all about. Second to last book here. So the next one I read was Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. Oh, goodness. This book I had a lot to say on this book too. I have to say, the premise of the story was very promising. And the writing had me wanting to keep reading to find out. It's such a horrible situation. This mother, their father dies, and this mother, they have no money, and they have to leave their home behind, and they get up in the middle of the night to, who knows where. And she says, we're going to go live with my parents, but I need to make sure that my father forgives me before I come into my inheritance. And she hides her kids in an attic. Just being a mother, I just can't imagine what crazy idea, already there, the mother's sick. I don't see, it hurt my heart. So I was just kept reading to be like, okay, what's going to happen with these kids? Somehow everything's going to be better, right? And you keep reading to find out what is going to happen. Of course, it should be better. It's never better. I kept reading because you think somehow everything's going to make sense. And it just never does. And it's always so bad. I have to say, the characters were compelling. Now, the little twins, they're more like props. You don't really get to know them as characters. They're basically props to show you how awful the situation is, okay? So already that makes you angry as a reader. Then you have Chris and Kathy. They're the 2 oldest kids who are looking after their twin brother and sister who are way younger than them. In this attic, they are brought food and water, and sometimes not if they're in trouble or if they've done something wrong. They can never make any noise, and the attic is hot and stuffy, and they're basically wasting away in this attic and dying. The ending, I knew one part of it was not a surprise, and the other part of it was, and it was the most horrible part that I could never have imagined that the author would go to such depravity with this one specific character, which she did, which just broke my heart at the end of the story. But one of the surprises I kind of guessed already. So that's kind of cool. There is a big reveal at the end. It's not a book that I would read lightly. And at the end of the book, I felt so empty. I get when books are written and there's horrible things that happen in books, but they're written and to show you like the real world, to show you the depth of certain situations. But I felt like this was written just to get that emotional reaction out of you and not to teach you anything. The only thing you really learn is that money makes the world go round for some people. And it's, yes, and I do understand that's a thing in this world. It's just, I can't describe how empty I felt. And I don't think I've ever come across a book. There was one other book, this was last year, but like I think this one even more so, that left me feeling so empty. So I actually read the reviews and the synopses for the next 4 books in this series, and I'm not touching it. Just it gets worse. Like, I don't know what to say. There's really nothing that's good or edifying about this book in the least. So I'm giving it like a 1.5 star. It's only getting the 1.5 star because she manages to pull you in and you keep reading to the end, and there is a good reveal at the end. That's it. That's the only thing I could say that I liked about it. I will say that at times it did get slow because, I mean, the kids are stuck in the attic, so there's nothing much to do. I mean, there are some times when they escaped the room, but there was just a lot of drudgery. So there's that too. The last one, which I think it was my favorite book of the month, was close behind. Boathouse Murders was close behind, but my last one is, here. I don't know if you can see it there. Shine. Okay, there we go. Glare. Beauty and the Clockwork Beast by Nancy Campbell Allen. When Lucy Pickett arrives at Blackwell Manor to tend to her ailing cousin Kate, she finds more than she bargained for. A restless ghost roams the hallways, werewolves have been reported in the area, and vampires lurk across the Scottish border. Lord Miles himself is clearly hiding a secret. He is brash and inhospitable and does not take kindly to visitors, even one as smart and attractive as Miss Pickett. He is unsettled by the mysterious deaths of his new wife Clara and his sister Marie. Could Miles himself be to blame for the deaths? Most obvious choice. Working together, Miles and Lucy attempt to restore peace to Blackwell Manor. But can Lucy solve the mystery of Miles? Can she love the man, beast, and all? I am such a sucker for Beauty and the Beast renditions, and yes, some are way better than others. And this one, I have to say, was great, and I give it 4.5 stars. I loved, basically it's steampunk in Victorian England, and I'm a huge Victorian era fanatic, so I loved that, and I love Beauty and the Beast. Okay, so I may be very biased with this review, and I am. Please forgive me, but I just loved all the elements. I really liked the supernatural element too. It was very cool. I kind of had that Jane Eyre, very, dismal, haunted feel to it. There's a ghost, there's a werewolf, there's a vampire. So the supernatural elements were a neat spin with the steampunk setting that the book had. So much to love about this book. Beauty and the Clockwork Beast. I loved the relationship between the two main characters, Lucy Pickett and the Lord Miles, who is the Beast character in this book. There were a lot of very subtle yet passionate moments between them, which is I love that slow burn. Nothing overt, but it's there hidden underneath the surface. And there were some hot and cold moments, so if you tend to get whiplash with those kind of relationships between characters, watch out. There is some of that here, but I thought overall the relationship was well done. Although maybe a couple parts were on the cheesy side. Another thing, I guess the only reason why I'm cutting out 0.5 star, because I've given this 4.5 stars, is the pacing at the beginning was a tad slow. Yes, there was world building, but I felt like it could have been picked up a little bit more. So that would be the only reason why I gave that a 0.5 star off. But after you get that over the beginning pacing, once the beginning pacing is done, then the rest, I couldn't put it down. I loved it so much, and I had a hard time stopping. I just wanted to finish reading it. But of course, I needed my sleep, and that really wouldn't bode well for me the next day. If you're looking to read something this month and you have no clue where to start, may I suggest my books that I have behind me. I've got historical fiction drama Redeemed from the Ashes and its sequel, Ghost in My Heart, which occurs 10 years after the Halifax explosion of 1917. And then my second standalone novel, which is Wisps of Gold, is a historical fiction murder mysteries set in the Caribou Gold Rush in BC. And its sequel, Scathed Bones, is also out for purchase. So I'm going to put those links down below in the description box, and feel free to check them out. Just remember that if you have read my books, please leave a review on Amazon, Goodreads, or any book retail store of your choice. It goes a long way to helping authors. I'm just going to point out a quick what my to-read list is for May. Now, I have Wonder Woman, Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo, which was part of the DC Comics book series that they did. We have Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. I'm so excited to get back into this because I read this book and the sequel 3-4 years ago, and then the third book came out and I never bought it, and so I decided I just had to finish the series. But I wanted to go back to the first and second book to see what it was like to read it all over again. I loved them. I have to say, it's one of my favorite series. It combines fantasy with historical fiction, Victorian era again. So, of course, I would love that. And I'm just kind of curious to see if I'm going to still enjoy it as much as I did the first time. And I also have Moll Flanders by Daniel Defoe. I told myself that this year I'd be reading more classics than I have in the past, so I'm looking forward to getting into this one. I don't really know what it's about, but I'll let you know next month. And then I also have Loon Shots, How to Nurture the Crazy Ideas That Win Wars, Cure Diseases, and Transform Industries. Sounds like a great subtitle to me. It really caught my attention. So I'm really eager to get into those. And I just found out that the library has the ICU by Claire McIntosh book in, so I'm also going to be reading that as well. And I'm going to try to squeeze Crooked Kingdom into this month's reading list. I don't know if I'll be able to. I've already read The Six of Crows, and I'm looking forward to getting into that book. But it might have to be bumped to the June list, so we'll see. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Once a month, the beginning of the month, I'm going to be showing what I've read, book reviews, and my to-read list for the next month. And then after that are going to be videos on writing tips and advice for writers. If you've read any of the books that I showed you for this month's past reading list, tell me, how did you like them? Did you agree with my opinions? Disagree? I would love to hear your comments. Take care.